So in this session, I want to talk about resourcing your plan. And I just want to give some advice and just some general information, but encourage you to ask other people, to get online, to have a look. Perhaps some of the things I'll say will just stimulate your thinking. And so that's what I hope I'm going to be able to do. Maybe chat about it with your team. That'd be, really make it worthwhile. But resources, obviously, without it, you can't do very much. Churches fail for lack of good leadership, and secondly, for lack of good resourcing. And the resources include things like people, assets, finances, knowledge. All of those resources are needed. Now, a good church planter really needs to have what I call faith and front. We need to have church planting faith, absolutely, that we can break through, that there's going to be a sense of serendipity, that God is going to bring something out of the blue, that when Jesus said he would build his church, that he will build his church. And they're not just words of men, but Jesus said, I will build my church. And so we have to have an absolute faith about that. So the first resource really is a spiritual resource. And we get that through reading the scripture, we get it through prayer, we get it through visioning, we just get it through prophecy, but we need that resource in our spirit. We need to take a faith journey, whether it's talking to people that have planted churches, whether it's reading about it, going through all the scriptures about it, but we just need to get that absolute conviction in our heart that this church will build come a hell or high water. The car park will fill up, the seats will be filled, the ministry will happen. Children will be learning about the Lord Jesus in this church until the day he returns. This is going to be a church that's going to be established until that day. You just got to get that confidence and that faith in your spirit. It's the first resource you need. And you may not have the greatest faith for miracles. Bring in somebody that has healing ministry. But you can't bring in someone to lead your church in the faith that's going to grow. You need to have that faith. Other areas of faith you can raise up around you, but you need to have that central faith. When the challenges come, you need to have that faith that can take us through hell or high water, just like Jesus promised he would. Second thing you got to have, like I just said, is you got to have front. In our town, we got a saying, got to have more front than Myers, because they've got a lot of shop windows. But basically, you've got to ask God and keep on asking. You've got to ask people and keep on asking. Church planters do not balk until other people balk. We just keep asking and looking for more that we can use. Because in the beginning, you don't have a lot of resources. And you really only have that first year when you kick off to paddle hard and lay the foundations for the year ahead. If in that first year, typically, you don't get to that 100 people, after that you begin to have a dip and it's harder to continue on. But once you've got that momentum in that first year, and then you can keep moving ahead. Momentum is hard to get, easy to lose, really hard to get again. And the more resources you have in the beginning, and the more time you take to put those resources together, the better that you will really be able to move through that first year. So by setting the tone, by asking God and asking people, knocking on the door, and you're asking people to give time and money and resource and assets and gifts to this venture, So if you're worried about asking, don't start. If you just got a lot of people around you that are complaining about giving, don't start with them. Start with the givers, and in all areas. If they have that heart, then you will hit the end of that first year running. Because the reality is, pioneers pay the price. If people just want to come along and homestead, then you're not going to get the thing off the ground. So get together people who have a pioneering spirit and a pioneering heart. People are your greatest resource. Jesus did not start anything with the larger congregations before he picked the team. He picked them specifically, and if you read John chapter 1 through where he is engaging with his disciples there, you will find that each of his disciples, as imperfect as they were, they all had vision for a better country. They had vision for a better kingdom. They had a vision in their heart, and they were willing to pay the price for it. And all of them did. All of them, save John, were martyred for the cause. And he spent that time in prison. Of course, one of them betrayed him, but Paul, who took his place, certainly also lost his life. And so people that are prepared to give their life for it. The other thing that Jesus did is he pulled his disciples together before he started ministry. He worked on leadership before he worked on ministry. One of the interesting things that Jesus said was, the poor you will have with you always. And the need of the world will be there always. But if you spend time developing the assets, developing the resources, and in this case I'm talking about people as well here, then you will be able to achieve much more in the time and the years ahead. You will be able to help more people, resource more people if you do this work in the beginning. And so we want to see people be able to get maybe 20 people together who can be the foundation of the church that's going to be planted, because if a planter can't get 20 people together, they're not likely to be a planter. And so that's a good indicator as well of what they can do. And so the thing is that don't start ministry, start with leadership. For instance, some churches want to start by doing welfare. Welfare works will not grow your church. Welfare is something that a growing church does. Miracles will not grow your church. Miracles is something that happens in a growing church. It's a byproduct. It's not a means to. And so you can hold all the miracle crusades you like and all the welfare programs you like. In general, they're not going to grow your church. Now, I know some people will say there's an exception, but let's believe that we work with the general truths in planting a church. So the thing that you're really looking for is a launch team and their families. So launch teams are not ongoing leadership teams, although part of the launch team may form part of the leadership team. But a launch team is basically there for one thing only, and that is to launch the public face of the church that you're planting. And you can take time to develop that. Now, I encourage you to think about the fact that 6 months is probably a good time. Anything less, and you probably won't be crossing your T's and dotting your I's. Anything more than that, it's very hard to keep momentum and interest moving forward. But think about that, you know. So, and it's also important to have, for even a few years, to have a launch mentality when you're planting a church. Not only are you launching the whole church to begin with, but every time you start something new, don't just start it, but launch it. When you launch your missions program, launch it. Do it with fanfare. Do it with colour. Do it with pizzazz. When you launch a children's ministry, do the same. When you launch your small group program, do the same through that program, so that everything has some life to it and everything kicks into the church. In fact, in a church, never lose the wow factor. Humdrum really doesn't create momentum. Momentum is just a series of small movements sustained that create that momentum over a period of time. And launches can be a part of that small series of movements sustained in a good way. And really, a church, in setting itself up, ought to have some of that wow factor. I'll talk more about that when we're talking about creative ministry within a church. So when you're creating this launch team, don't appoint people to titles, but rather enlist them for jobs to be done or tasks that need to happen. Recruit them for that. And you'll be able to see how they operate in that for that first 6 months or 12 months. And then if you have to create positions with titles, well, you see how people went. In order to recruit people, it's really important, first of all, to have a sense of credibility so that people listen to you. Now, it might be that your credibility comes from the fact that you've done some things in the past and you've got runs on the board, and don't be afraid of talking to people about that, because it does give you some credibility. that the way you come across and the way you talk, your confidence, that you have some idea of what you're talking about, that you have a vision, and more than that, beyond the vision, that you have a plan on how to achieve the vision and how to resource the plan. Those sorts of things give people confidence that they might, have buy-in to what you're trying to achieve. So you need to be able to really have that vision and be able to paint pictures of that vision. What will it do? What will it feel like? What will it look like? So the thing is, we have to get it from God, and we have to get it out of our heart, and we have to get it from sitting in a cafe in the area or where we want to plant that church. As you're sitting there and you're getting a feel for the community, you're seeing the people. Jesus spent a lot of time in the marketplaces. He saw the anxiety on faces. He saw, where people were at, and really the whole sense of his Luke 4:18-19 in that the Spirit is on him and anointed to set at liberty, open blind eyes, set people free, heal broken hearts. All those things really came, from the direction of the Father, but the needs of the people. They met in that sense of vision that he had. And so we need to get the same thing. We need to have a heart that feels and a mind that has a picture. So, for instance, when I was planning one of the churches that I planted, I really wanted to get a sense of vision, and I was down along the beach there praying every day, and just asking God. And I had this picture, this sense of it was this lady standing totally dejected in a home. Her whole physical being was just one of dejection, desolation, abandonment, and in my heart sprung up this feeling of I wanted to be her champion and people like her, and to build a church that could indeed bring the truth of Luke 4:18-19 that I just spoke about, the spiritual empowerment to be able to set at liberty, to heal the bruising, to do all that kind of thing that would truly touch lives in a real way and make a difference and transform them and form them. And so that was the captured heart of it. And then we had to begin to envision that and what it would sound like. But more than that, then what would it take to achieve that? What were the plans for that? What was the strategy for that? Who did we need from that? How could we get there? And then really I had to get it out of my mind and my heart and out of the discussions that we had, because that wasn't just done by me. It was a group of people coming together and engaging them in that, but keeping it central. In the end of the day, friends, try to keep the picture that the planter determines the what we're going to do. The team can bring in the how we're going to do it and who's going to be involved and when we're going to do it and maybe the way to phrase the why of it. But at the end of the day, you can't have a lot of what we're going to do all over the place, because that just gets things moving in circles. So even though you engage people in the conversation, at the end of the day, this is what we're going to do has to be determined by somebody. And the person that has the feel of that vision can sense that what's being discussed is true to that, and so we can move forward into it. Then we write it down and make it plain, just like the Bible tells us to do, so that they that read it can run with it. And it needs to be believably inspirational. It needs to create a lift, but it needs to be believable. There's no point in sitting down with 5 people and saying next year we're going to have 1,000 people. We can get excited about it, but really in the bottom of their hearts, nobody's really going to believe it. So it needs to be a believable inspiration that people can get buy-in to. And so we need to recruit and sell the vision. And I think we need to be aware that you need to ask yourself the question when you're getting buy-in. You need to ask yourself the question, what's in it for them? Now, Peter asked this question of Jesus. He said, we've left houses and land and all these things in it. Basically, he said, what's in it for us? Now, Jesus didn't scold him. He said, I'll tell you what's in it for you. And Jesus answered it. And we need to be able to answer that question when we're trying for the buy-in. There's an opportunity to do something lasting and worthwhile. They get to use their gift and hear well done from Jesus one day. They get to help people. They get to learn and they get to grow. They get to have new experiences and do things they've never done before, but somehow find the thing that gets the buy-in for that person so that they're on board with it. So we need to find the people with the vision, with the heart, with the means, with the strategy, with the what's in it for them. We need to very clearly define what it is, what we want them to do and what we don't want them to do. And very often we need to make sure that we talk to their spouses, because one can be keen but not the other. Now let me tell you that if there's a division between their spouse and you, then the end will come. They're not going to divorce their spouse, they'll divorce you. So keep everybody connected and talking through what's happening. And so find people, but don't find anyone. People, when they're planning churches, there's two issues that I find that they have in regard to this. One is that they'll take anybody, and the other thing is they'll do anything to keep everybody. And they're both mistakes. Sometimes when you find somebody, you might get 2 people, but they'll lose you 10. And sometimes this desire to keep everybody, sometimes by keeping those 2 that you found, you're going to lose 10 more. So really, the gift is to find the right people with the right heart and the right manner and the right spirit. And also, if they're going to come to you, ask where they've been. Do a little bit of a background check. See what's happening behind them there, and as well. So not just everybody can come, So when you're gathering resources, talk to your family and your friends. Ask them to give you 6 or 12 months. You may be able to have your meeting when their church service is not on. So as long as you talk to their pastor, they may get a leave of absence for 6 to 12 months. It happens. And we'll give you that time to help you to actually have a congregation there when other people come in, so they can feel like they're a part of something. Talk to people who went to Bible college with you, if you went to Bible college, who are not serving anywhere at the moment. They may want to come along and help you. Not everybody that goes to Bible college wants to be or is called to be a senior minister, but they may serve in many other ways. I encourage you to then, with those people, to hold events, hold dinner parties where they can invite friends, whether saved or unsaved. And the unsaved, you mightn't be selling them immediately on getting saved, but you might sell them on the whole venture of coming together and building something. Believe it or not, there are good people in the community that believe in the church, even if they're not a part of it, and they actually are willing to help. Another thing you could do is hold expression of interest meeting in the community. Book out a section of a cafe, advertise it everywhere, online, on every notice board in town, and advertise an expression of interest meeting and see who comes along. Hold 3 of those and see how many contacts you make, and then work those contacts. And that's another session that we'll be talking about. So just gather and keep on gathering. It's a foundational structure in the church to gather and keep on gathering. Meet people over coffee, meet people over meals, but voice the vision. Talk about what it's going to feel like, what it's going to look like all the time. Be recruiting and be gathering. Some people say, well, it's old-fashioned to, people don't want to knock on doors, and people don't want to stand in the markets, and people don't want to hand out leaflets. And there are some things that are right for you and some things that are wrong for you. But let me just say that you have to sow to reap. And so even if you think that letterboxing will not bring anybody in, the fact that you've letterboxed will bring some people in, but maybe not from the letterboxing, because the scriptures tell us, if you sow, then you reap. If you have that faith, then you will do so. So some people sometimes when they're planting say, oh, that doesn't work. They end up doing nothing. But if you're going to get some of these foundational assets, including people, then sow into getting people and you will reap. And also, get the gatherers on side. You'll find people are natural gatherers. and inspire them and release them and anoint them to go out and gather. They have more contacts than you've got. So if you gather gatherers, man, you're multiplying the ability to be able to get more and more people in all the time. Another asset area that you're really going to need to work on is the area of finances. And let me say, conservatively, you should not be looking at less than $20,000 or $30,000 in the kitty to begin with. Otherwise, you're never going to get the launch that you really need. And I'm being conservative there. And you will still be struggling in a year's time. And your church will get a mentality of doing everything on a shoestring. And $20,000 or $30,000 is doable. I've planted many churches, and I've always been the first one, my wife and I, to write out the check and to put it on the table and to ask the launch team to also bring their checks and to put them on the table. And very often in that meeting alone, we've exceeded that amount. But we got to sow and we got to reap. And so we, as the planters, have to invest in it. Pioneers pay the price every time. And, you know, when the launch team gets involved in that, don't just ask them to tithe into the meetings you're having, but actually to invest into it. The tithe is something that happens for the Lord anyway, but the investment is beyond that. And then you'll find that where their treasure is, their heart also will follow, and they'll be really engaged with it. So we never want to push need. Need is not the way to get finances. We want to push opportunity. Do not talk about the fact that we need. Don't wring your hands in a need foundation. Don't do it in the beginning. Never do it as the church grows. Set yourself up in a way where need doesn't happen, but where opportunities happen all the time. And so, as I said, you can take up tithes in your initial launch team meetings as you're having them. It may be that you're involved with a parent church. It may be that you've come out of a parent church, so you can approach them and ask them to bless you in this way as well. It might be that you have other minister friends in other churches and you've built up a network of people that are happy to invest into a ministry, because if they believe in you, then there'll be a return for the kingdom in time to come. Also, if there's a mission aspect to what you're doing, it might be that you're reaching out to a particular people group or particular ethnicity, and there may be a mission aspect to it. And so you can get to other churches as well and ask them to put it into their mission program. It might be that there are churches who want to plant churches, but they just have not been able to. Well, ask them to realize their vision by assisting you. You can hold fundraising events, but make them good ones and not the cake stall. And these fundraising events will also work as awareness events for you in the initial phases. And you can band together, for instance, for a mega garage sale in an open area of the town that you're in. Get an open area, do it there, have the signs up, banners up, do the whole thing, a bit of fun, face painting, do the whole thing. But mega garage sale, it might be that other people, they can buy stalls for that time as well. But just make a splash and create fundraising opportunities. You can hold dinners, you can hold movie nights. There are people in your network, they may not even be a part of your church, but they can get buy-in to the vision that have dormant talents. I remember a lady who took in students and tutored them, and she was able to put a $5,000 check into the initial startup funding, and really being able to get around to your friends and a little bit of startup funding can begin to happen in what you're doing. And as you're doing these events, for instance, to raise money, not only are you raising awareness, but you're finding out who the workers are. People are learning to work together. And that's a good thing in the foundations of the church as well. And so you'll discover some worker assets, which is really important. The other thing that you're able to get, you don't need all cash, but some of it can be in kind. You can get in-kind assistance. For instance, there are churches and organizations that may well give you for a very small amount of finance, places to meet in and resources and venues that you can use. And a lot of them already have equipment in place. They may already have the AV system or the sound system. They may have a room for the children's ministry and so forth. And And it may be that some churches will give you, and they've already done that, make friends of people as you're planting. Make friends of them as you're heading into it. Make friends of them as you're even having thoughts about planting churches. So one day you can go back there and say, I need some musicians. And for instance, could 4 churches may give you a small music team once every month, and that way you have music every month. As long as through the 6-12 months that you're starting, you're developing your own, and as those churches send you musos, if you have any talent, they can sing along with them or play along with them or watch over the shoulder for the people operating the AV equipment. As long as you're developing your own, churches will help you. If you're started your church meeting at a different time to another church's meeting, they may help you with children's ministry rosters. And again, the same thing, have some of your people working in with them. It may be that you can pay people to come and play music. You can. There are local music schools. There are people who will come and look after children, all sorts of things. The largest church in our nation hired musicians when they first began. And so it's something that you can do. There's lots of ways. So you have to resource your church. Another thing you have to do is resource and gather information. Information will give you inspiration. Now, the reality is you do not need to reinvent the wheel. Someone has done it before you. Someone has resourced it. There is all sorts of information on the web and in other churches. There are studies, there are how-tos, there are job descriptions, all sorts of things that you can get. Most people just have to be good at looking and then adopting something that fits with their culture. And then most people do that. A few other people then are able to adapt successfully. Most people adapt unsuccessfully. Some can adapt successfully, and very few people create. So I encourage you to begin with the adopt. And that way you can adopt things from churches that are really successful. You can go online. There are studies, there are videos, there are programs. I encourage you to access knowledge by connecting with successful planters. Don't connect with people who are struggling or people that are smaller than you, other than to assist them, but to help you to get knowledge. Connect with people that are not 10 church levels above, but 1 or 2 church levels further on. The other thing that you need to do really is to find resources for the people in your church who are ministering in your church. And for instance, your children's workers, find resources for them. Train them in the kids' safe requirements. Bring people in from larger churches that can train them how to minister to children. It might be that you have a pastoral care team or a pastoral care minister. Connect them in a mentoring sense with a successful pastoral care minister in a local church. And it might be that happens with your treasurer. But with everyone, make sure that they are well resourced, that they don't have to do cake stalls to resource their department. Let that be what the whole church does. You've asked them to do a great work. Resource them with material, with information. Take them with you to conferences, send them to conferences, engage them with other people in other churches that have learned what they're doing. And so in all these things, gather resources for your plant, whether it be in assets, in finances, in people, or in knowledge. You need resources. So the Lord bless you as you discuss and digest these things, and I trust that it has been of some use to you. Use to you. Use to you. Use to you.